And yes, the city of Dallas is certainly setting the pace for educating, equipping, and supporting business ownership through franchising. Now we're going to talk to one of those franchisors who does want to commit to being local. That's why they're here in Dallas, Texas today, and really want to focus on that. We're talking about Tony Nicholson. Tony is the Vice President of Franchise Development at Self Esteem Brands. They are a platinum sponsor VIP diversity champion for J3. Tony brings over 18 years of experience in the franchising world to his role at Self Esteem Brands, including in consumer experience, engagement, gym operations initiatives as well. He spent his last 10 years at Self Esteem Brands in franchising sales and development, including 3 years leading a team of seasoned development professionals focused on expanding their 4 major brands, which are Anytime Fitness, Waxing the City, Base Camp Fitness, and the Bar Method. Tony has also been a franchisee himself in the last 20 years, owning multiple Anytime Fitness clubs in Minnesota and Wisconsin. He's also served as a member of Self Esteem Brands Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Board, helping to drive new DE&I initiatives and programs for the company. He serves on the board of Rooted Philanthropic, an organization focused on helping people of St. Paul's East Side communities unlock their potential. Tony has a BA in communications with a minor in economics and an emphasis in exercise science from the University of Minnesota. He resides in Woodbury, Minnesota with his wife, LaRoyce, and his 3 children. Let's hear from Tony. Tony, come on up.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Dallas. My name is Tony, and Jack, thank you for the intro. Thank you for having us. We are honored to be here and to be a part of this process and this project. I just wanted to spend a little bit of time, and what I loved about Carlos and the group that just came up here, everything they just said, yes, times 10. So, and when I actually walk into different areas, I've been in franchising, as Jack had mentioned, for a long time, at least in my mind. There's always somebody out there who's been in the game longer. When you go to these different groups, whether it's broker networks, IFA, IFE, multi-units, URSA, there's always somebody that has more knowledge, more background. And so me as a franchising now professional, I always try to soak it up. I always try to learn more from those who have paved the way. So, and I'm on the road all the time too. I literally just flew in last night, and I'm hopping on a flight here in about an hour and a half. And so far this year, I've been on 8 trips, and then between now and April 15th, I'll be on, another 4 or 5 more trips. So I travel quite a bit. And a lot of the different work that we do right now is trying to find ways to grow the brand, recruit, tap into different areas. I will say this, as we kind of go through, Johnny King, as we kind of go through some of the information, I know that this very specific area of driving, recruiting, and making sure that our brands and the communities we are in we have more diversity, which I'll say right now, we did some surveys. We know that we're not hitting the mark. We know that as of right now, if you look at where we are, what we do, we don't have the representation that we should. And I'll kind of walk through some of the accolades of who we are. But as Jack had mentioned, this is me. I've been around for a long time in the space. Two things I want to point out. So I live in Minneapolis, and the last 3 to 4 years have been unique for the world, right? We've gone through COVID-19. We lost Kobe. Businesses have had some challenges. There's some challenges right now in the banking system. The hardest I've cried as an adult was in the spring of 2020, right? So what happened with George Floyd was in my backyard. And so that was for our organization, it was a watershed moment. It was an opportunity for us to say, we know that we should be doing more. We know that this was an opportunity for us to engage. And so I was one of the first folks on our DEI board. And I'll just flat out tell you that how we started the board was completely the wrong way. We had about 18 people on the board. I looked around the room, looked around the Zoom calls, and I was the only person on those calls in that room that looked like me. And as we started kind of going through, how do we do better here? How do we have more diversity? We had a lot of spin. We had a lot of tire spin, and we started getting off track. The reason why we started the council was because of what happened with George Floyd. We were in meetings talking about how do we recruit more people that are hard of hearing, people that have disabilities, more women franchisees. Those are all great. Those are all great initiatives. But the reason why we created the board, we definitely lost our traction, which is how we found J3. We needed somebody to come to the table, help us to really put together a program that made sense. What I always tell my clients, what I always have my team tell their folks is that if you partner with the right franchisor, it should be about as plug and play and turnkey as possible. Everything that Carlos mentioned. Marketing, operations, real estate, funding partners, a franchise business coach. It should be about as turnkey as possible. You could certainly start your own brand. You could certainly start your own business, but you're gonna have to figure out all those things. Well, as it relates to this particular topic of how do we increase our diversity, Self Esteem Brands had zero clue. So we did activate some folks who could help us, which I'm gonna talk about in just a little bit. Johnny? So Self Esteem Brands. We are a very, very large organization. And Jack, by the way, if I forget at the end, will you just remind me to mention legacy? Okay, thank you. So we are a very large organization, and our motto is to improve the self-esteem of the world. Now, I know that's a very ambiguous, broad statement, but the businesses that we roll out, the businesses that we help folks franchise, in our minds, help accomplish that. Johnny? Next one. So Self Esteem Brands, we've been around for 21 years, and I'm gonna hop into some of the brands we have, but we are now in close to 40 countries in all 50 states in the US. We've got a lot of locations, and because of the success of our flagship brand, 10 years ago, actually 9.5 years ago, we attracted back a very, very large PE firm called Roark Capital, based out of Atlanta. Roark's a 23, 24, $25 billion brand. I believe they're invested in about 40 different brands. They've been our partner now for 10 years. Well, as I was talking with Carlos, most of these PE brands see an opportunity, they see upside, they buy in, pull out some of the equity. Within 3 to 4 years, they typically sell. The fact that Roark has been with our brand now for 10 years is a really good sign. So ultimately, at the end of the day, once our first brand did so well, we then now turned into a holding company. So now we have several brands that we franchise that were highlighted in our sizzle reel. Out of those several brands we have, we actually franchise 4 of them. Johnny? These are the brands. These are brands that Jack had mentioned. Johnny? Our largest brand, Anytime Fitness. Anytime Fitness has been around for 20 going on 21 years. We have 3,000 stores in the US, 5,000 global. I run a team of sales and development folks that help clients and franchisees get into franchising in the US and Canada. And then in every other country we're in, up to those 40 different countries, not my favorite term, but we have a master franchisee model where folks then buy into UK, Southeast Asia, Australia. We're on all 7 continents. And then basically they represent us as the corporate entity. So they recruit, they train, they support, they motivate, they help stand up. And then we as the master franchisor, all the benefits of about 20% come to us. So it's a great model. Now here's what I'll say. I wanted to throw out one quick stat. So If you look at the fitness space, it's a very crowded, noisy space. With Anytime Fitness, we think that it's a great model, but it's almost flat. It's almost at this point flat, meaning that the amount of consumers that hop into the space versus the competition, we're at about a 5 to 7% growth rate. But we do know there's still a ton of opportunity here in the US, and then again, global, wide open. I think when it's all said and done with this brand alone, I think we'll have 25 to 30,000 locations. A real quick baseline. So if you look at, in the world of franchising, less than 3.5% of all brands have more than 100 locations, right? So getting over more than 100 locations is kind of a big deal. And I mean everyone, from the Chick-fil-A's, McDonald's, Burger King's, all of them, right? So this is a brand where we definitely struck gold, which then turned into us partnering with Rourke, and now we've got the other brands. Johnny? This is a brand that's relatively new. It's actually been around for about 10 years. It was actually founded by a guy by the name of Nick Schwimmer, and Nick was the co-founder of Zappos Shoes. So as I mentioned before with Anytime Fitness, in that 5 to 7% growth rate, this space has the most potential within our portfolio. We are forecasting that 30 to 35% uptick in growth. This is a brand that competes directly with the Orange Theories, the F45s, CrossFit type models. And what's unique about this brand is that although you shrink your consumer market for the consumers that have interest in this, there's also quite a bit less competition. So we love it. We've now, and actually this brand, we launched this brand in April of 2020. So as you guys can imagine, the worst time in the world to launch a brand. When we acquired the brand, there was 5 locations. Fast forward to today, we've now sold close to 110 licenses in 10 different states. So ton of growth for the model. We're excited about it. We're now launching it internationally as well underneath a different umbrella called Summit. But this is a brand that we've got a lot of excitement about. Johnny? The Bar Method. The Bar Method is definitely more of a eclectic brand, still in that 100 location space. But with all the brands we have in the fitness space, we do have different consumer segments, and how we approach it and how we recruit and the different marketing and the support, all of those elements have to be unique and specified towards the brand. But what we love about this brand is that similar to Basecamp Fitness, there are a lot less consumers that have interest, but there's only about 3 major folks in this space. So there's a ton of upside here as well. Wax in the City. This is the only non-fitness based brand that we have today. With most of the brands we have, what's the term? I would consider most of our brands to be not recession proof, but recession resistant. Meaning that going through COVID-19, coming through some of the challenges, although there were a lot of temporary shutdowns and different types of mandates, folks still had to work out, right? Father time is coming for all of us, right? So at the end of the day, on the fitness side of our portfolio, we had some challenges coming out of it. We're now getting back to pre-COVID levels. But with Wax in the City, what do we all have? Hair. We all have hair. We all have hair. Well, we all have hair in spaces. We all have hair in spaces that we don't necessarily want the hair in. And so this is a brand that, coming out of COVID-19, when we opened up the doors, we had a huge rush of business, a huge influx of business. And our thought was that you had a lot of people that were cooped up in their basements, in their homes, had a bunch of hair growing in a bunch of different spots. We saw about a 35 to 40% increase in 2021. All of our analysts told us, whatever you guys do not expect that type of long-term growth. Expect a nice little blip and then it'll level out. Well, I'm happy to say that 2022 was the best year out of 10 years in franchising we've ever seen. And what I love about this brand is that there's really only one major competitor within the space, European Wax. And as we kind of look at growing this brand, this is a brand that I specifically love for the BIPOC community. Because if you look at how different types of processes work for removing hair, if you've got curly hair, if you've got different types of hair, certain things like laser does not work well for us, right? So this is a brand that we would love to have a lot more growth in. We've got about 150 stores. Actually, that's a lot off. We've got 150 stores today with another 100 in production. And we think that when it's all said and done, we will have close to 1,000 locations in the US. And our revenues for this brand have never been better. AUVs at about 600,000 for the average. Top 1/3 are going to be closer to about 800. And then we've got multiple locations that are well over $1 million a year. Johnny? All right. So last but not least, what are we looking for as relates to franchisees? Well, as Carlson Group had mentioned, what we love about franchising is that this is a business that you can do it in a few different ways. Yes, you can be an owner operator. I will tell you that probably less than 25% of our investors actually run their businesses. A lot of our folks will scale, and so the average franchisee within our ecosystem will have 3.5 to 5 stores. Now that's a bit of a misleading stat because we do have some larger super groups in that legacy play. But I'll tell you that a much better stat is that 65% of our franchisees have more than one store. So this is a business where you could, if you're an attorney, if you're a doctor, if you're an educator, and you've done a certain career for X amount of years because you've got a family or you knew something you want to get into, but yet you're looking for passive income, this is definitely a great fit for a lot of folks, right? Getting into franchising. And then we have folks that say, listen, I want to still keep my job as an attorney. I want to still keep my job as an educator, but at some point I would love to own my own gym. I'd love to own my own business. So we do help folks essentially craft a bit of a transition plan. So at the end of working for General Mills or Target or Best Buy for 20 years, we will help these folks set up a transition plan. And the last thing I want to mention at the end of my last slide is I want to kind of talk about the whole legacy play. So we're looking for franchisees who are coachable, folks who are well capitalized. However, when we looked at our current franchisee system and all the folks that we have, we did some surveys. We did some surveys looking at our diversity. And I'm okay sharing this, but at the end of the day, and we actually used Popeye's model for creating a bit of a baseline. And so Popeye's has a model where they want to be able to recruit more diversity as relates to Black or African American, Latinx, and then Native American. Those are the 3 big groups that have the least amount of representation. When we looked at our current franchisee system, we had about 6%. And there was one group where it was a less than 1% sign with a squiggly line. So we knew that it wasn't great. And so we knew we had some opportunities for us to grow in some of these spaces. And so partnering with J3, some of the things we're trying to figure out is how do we as a franchisor remove some of the barriers for this group? How do we do that? Is it funding? Is it mentorship? Is it creating a path to success? These are all the things that, as I had very candidly mentioned earlier, we just don't have our arms wrapped around it. So I'll just flat out say that we still are in growth mode. We are still in trying to discover how do we do it? How do we create a better model? And there's definitely some opportunity for us to grow. So the last thing I want to point out on this slide is that we want folks who are passionate, right? We want folks who are passionate. We want folks who want to hop into the business. The one type of franchisee that we won't partner with is somebody who wants to be disengaged, right? Someone who's looking for what we call in the space mailbox money. They'll hop into the business, they'll hire somebody to run the business, and then they'll maybe check into the business once every 12 months. We've got a very, very, very low failure rate across all of our brands. Historically, we're at a less than 2% failure rate. The stores and the models and the franchisees that fail, typically 85% of the time are folks who are completely disengaged. So we want someone who's passionate. You don't have to be in the business every day. If you've got 10 locations, there's no way for me to mass produce Carlos. So at some point, you're going to have to rely on systems and processes and really good people, right? Johnny? Oh, and actually, Johnny, you can go one more. Okay. So one of the things that we tapped into early on was, and this is in my mind, this is the tip of the iceberg. We wanted to be able to offer a discount for that group that I mentioned earlier, right? And I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's good enough. I don't think that's where we ultimately want to be, but at least we're now hopping into the space. I think where we get really good is we start to partner up with different folks to help us to recruit, to create different types of programming for funding and for financing. But I think our big opportunity is to create some mentorship models. And I don't know who mentioned this. Somebody had mentioned going into maybe different areas where underrepresented areas for people of color. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit for at least my company to partner up with the right franchisees to go into this space. So I couldn't have said it better. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I've now been appointed to a council where we're essentially going to be every single 12 months. We need to spend about $25 million, and that $25 million needs to go to, well, if a potential franchisee has earned the right versus given the right, someone who's earned the right to become a franchisee, but they may not have a 15% injection, they may not have a stellar credit score. We want to be able to remove some of those barriers with some of these funds, grow in some of these spaces, and then ultimately have a much better look within our brand. I want to talk about legacy really quickly as I close. So one of the things that I had noticed, and I think you guys have mentioned, looking at the space, when I go to these different councils and these different conferences, I look around, there aren't a lot of people who look like me. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what I love about franchising is that this is a business where you can pull out, if you've got the right brand, you can pull out good, solid money every year, good, solid passive income. But it's also a legacy play for folks, right? Meaning that not only are you pulling out money, but you're now growing equity within your business, right? So as we become now this very large organization, we now have a lot of PE firms knocking at our doors. And the PE firms are now interested in buying out franchisees who have five plus locations. And so when you look at the value of some of our businesses, the value is typically about 3.5 times EBITDA, right? On the more aggressive side, maybe you say 5, but that's a hard sell. We've got now PE firms that are coming in making offers 14, 15 to 20 times EBITDA. So if an average Anytime Fitness per our 2019, 2020 FDD is at about $200,000 for EBITDA, take that times 3.5, take that times 5, take that times 15. And so now this is a great opportunity for us to be able to not only run a business, be in some more diverse communities, but now have the ability to pass down this legacy business. I was recently at an event where I was with a bunch of different folks who've been in franchising and just business owners. And we kind of all went around the room. We talked about our backgrounds, talked about our families, and 80% of the people in the group either had inherited a business or had their family push down the business to them or kind of brought them into the business. That's not me. That's not me. I can tell you that everything that I've done, sleeves rolled up, hopping in, learning as we go. And so I personally want to make sure that we now create a much better platform for people like me to get into the space. So last thing I'll say is that I'm not going to be able to be here for the Q&A panel, but I want to be able to share my information just in case anyone has questions. So my email address is Tony, Tony, .Nicholson, Nicholson, at S as in Sarah, E as in Edward, brands with an S. So Tony.Nicholson at sebrands.com. If I can help in any way or partner up and or information share, I'd love to do so. But again, my name is Tony Nicholson. I'm the VP of Development for Self Esteem Brands. And again, I just know that our group, there's opportunity. And last thing I'll say is this, is that when we kind of go around and look at different things and folks say, well, why do you like franchising? Why do you like owning your own small business? And I say, why not? Why shouldn't we be? Why shouldn't we be at the table? Why shouldn't we have a good chunk of the business, right? So thank you for your time today, everyone.
Thank you, Tony. Legacy. I had to remember that word for him. Very nicely done. We certainly appreciate the unique perspective Tony has as both a multi-unit franchisee and leading a team within the franchisor. We're also really appreciative of Self Esteem Brands, their industry leading diversity initiatives that are now underway. We just saw a few of them up there. So thanks to you and that incredible SEB leadership team.